Tua tēnā koe. Kia papa tuanuku tēnā koe, kia tēnei whare tēnā koe. Ki te honga mate, ki te honga ora. Nā mea no tātea hinengaro tōke ke whakatau. Ko au te kai whakahaere tēnei ko Joe Taku Parag. Welcome to everyone on EECA's market update for this quarter. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to our esteemed panel of experts. Today we will be covering off transport, heavy vehicle charging. We've got a new fund that we will be talking you through, some work we're doing in the warmer Kiwi homes world, and a great update on our commercial and solar insights. We will be answering questions, and we will ask you to hold them off to the end. There's a space where you can pop those in, and I will help facilitate your questions to the person that can answer them the best. And just so you know, this session is being recorded and it will be made available on our website at a later date. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce you to our first presenter, Richard Briggs, who will be talking about transport. Thank you, Richard.
Joe, I see that Richard's not quite online yet. Did you want to just drop onto my slides in the meantime?
No, that's okay.
Richard's here.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, a few technical issues. My apologies. Hey, look, just a very quick introduction to the transport activity in EECA, and then I'll hand over to the team to talk in more detail on some specific programs that you all might be interested in following up on. We've got about 170,000 trucks in the fleet in total at the moment, and about 30,000 of those are long-haul trucks. And whilst that only represents about 5% of the vehicle fleet, it is responsible for around a quarter of overall vehicle emissions. And we know that there are a range of barriers faced by individuals and businesses that inhibit the wider uptake of zero-emission transportation, and whether that's battery, electric, or hydrogen fuel cell. And alongside the capital cost barrier, there's still that inherent risk to companies adopting these new technologies that does disincentivize innovation, even when technologies are proven and are commercially available. The Low Emission Vehicle Contestable Fund was established now way back in 2016. And interestingly, at that time, we probably had about 900 EVs. There were no electric or hydrogen trucks, and certainly no electric or hydrogen buses. We had no car share schemes, and I think maybe 1 or 2 public chargers. So over the last 8 years, what that fund has enabled to occur is over 300 demonstration projects, and has co-funded now just on 1,000 public DC chargers. This has really provided the market a lot of confidence, and certainly a lot of data that's available to support business cases and investment in zero-emission vehicles. But the segment has now matured to a stage where zero-emission transportation is emerging more as a mainstream than a demonstration, and the need to overcome risks is really now declining in most applications. So consequently, our core engagement programs, mainly focused on stationary energy, will now need to incorporate transportation and move forward as one, so we can meet the needs of all of our stakeholders. And as an example, RETA has been highly successful in identifying regionally the supply and demand opportunities for process heat. However, we know that the emerging demand for energy, particularly for our heavy vehicle fleet, will need to be similarly mapped out. Interestingly, bigger trucks now are approaching 1 megawatt hour of battery capacity, and 30,000 of those are going to pose quite a supply-demand challenge, more than equal to that of the process heat. Truck stops for battery electric or hydrogen are going to need to accommodate in the order of 10 megawatt chargers, and I've also read quite recently now that are in development are 7 megawatt chargers. So when a truck stops, got 10 chargers of 2-3 megawatts, that's a massive amount of energy that's going to need to be accommodated. The good news, though, is the trucks like both of these here will have ranges of around about 600k fully laden, so we're not going to need too many of those. So Rita 2, and we're calling Rita 2 because we're not very creative with our names at EECA, is going to add a transport overlay to include traffic flow and volume data for both our light and heavy fleets. So what the intent of that is to aid our charge point operators and the electricity distribution businesses identify charging demand and sites for public charger hubs and truck stops. So the intent is that we'll have one tool with multiple layers, and whatever the stationary energy interest or transport interest is, that those layers can be added and turned off, so you can see a quite comprehensive picture. So that'll be in development over the next few months. Look, several transport-specific programs do remain alongside the Low Emission Transport Fund, and that includes the heavy transport sector programs. And I'll hand over now to Camilla and to start looking at those in a lot more detail. Over to you, Camilla.
Good morning. I'm Camilla Cochrane. I'm the manager of the funds delivery team. We used to be called the transport team. We do still have a very heavy focus on the transport sector, but we have incorporated more recently the Technology Demonstration Fund, and I'll go through that in just a second. If you go to the next slide, please. So one of the levers we use to promote our mission is targeted investment. And like I say, transport sector is a big focus because it comprises 44% of New Zealand's energy-related emissions. As Richard said, high upfront costs and unknown total cost of ownership are really the main barriers in the private sector's uptake of zero and low emission heavy vehicles, both on and off road. So really what we try and do is target our investment to those. We've got a few funds open at the moment. And really my point today, aside from introducing our new fund, which is opening in the new year, is to let you know that the opportunity is there to apply for projects now. And we're always keen on having conversations. So please do get in touch with any of your ideas. Kind of like any time, we may not have a round open, but we can always have a conversation with you about the best way to position your projects. So going from the left, it's the Low Emissions Heavy Vehicle Fund that launched in September. Now, my colleague Claire will tell you about that in just a moment, so I'll leave that one for now. The second one along is the Low Emissions Transport Fund. So many of you will have had success, hopefully, in applying for this in the past. We have a funding round open at the moment, specifically aimed at ports and on the third-party operators that operate at ports. So it's very much a sort of a standard low-emission transport fund round. However, the scope is relatively limited, and we do expect to see larger projects than normal. So we are really, really keen to talk to any of you that this is relevant for. And just to mention also, we will have a new round of the LETF opening in the new year. That'll be our standard vehicles, technologies, off-road and marine. So any of your more general projects, please do have a chat now or talk to us in the new year when that opens. I think we're thinking late Jan or early Feb. The next one along is the Technology Demonstration Fund. So that's an always-on fund. It covers stationary energy as well as transport. And the sort of things that it's covered in the past have been bike couriers. We've covered electric trucks, electric boats, heat pumps and frost fans, heat recovery technology and drones. So if you're thinking of applying, if you've got any projects that you think might qualify, like I say, do give us a call. My colleague Dinesh can help with a preliminary assessment and give you a good feel for whether the project would meet the criteria or not, and we can help you put your best project forward. And so now I'll start telling you a little bit about an upcoming opportunity for public heavy vehicle charging. So if you go to the next slide, thanks. So this one's in the commercial and heavy vehicle space. We've got a notice of intent live on GETS at the moment, which really is advance notice that we are going to be having a funding round opening in the new year. And again, that's likely timing late Jan, early Feb. We're going to be having $5 million total available for this. And what we're looking for is public zero emission refueling and recharging infrastructure. So open to hydrogen and electric. This doesn't cover vehicles. Like I say, that's covered with the low emission heavy vehicle fund. But really what we're trying to do is to ensure that we're helping the market unlock the opportunity from electric vehicles in the heavy space by supporting commercial and heavy vehicle infrastructure. The projects that these involve are bigger, more complex. They're going to use a hell of a lot more power, like Richard mentioned. And so what we want to do is not just build chargers for heavy vehicles. We want shared and public. We want collaborations in order to build that aggregated demand. We want to see technology demonstrations and ways of managing the impact on the grid. This is not standard solutions, and it's also not great projects, but for private fleets only. A great project would be demonstrating some or all of those types of technologies like grid management technologies, hardware, software, battery-supported chargers, demand management, frequency support, those types of solutions. So potential options could include heavy vehicles specific charging hub. We're not excluding vans. That's also equally important. Behavior change resulting from changes to operations resulting from going electric. We're really interested in that space. Shared facilities in busy industrial areas or a journey charging station on a major freight route. So those are the sort of projects we'd love to have a chat with you about. The notice of intent is really just to give people a bit more time to prepare, since it takes ages to pull together all the costs and so on. And so, we're aiming to get projects signed off and contracted by 30 June. So the time is now. We don't have much time to lose. So if that's you, do get in touch. And in the meantime, I'll pass over now to Claire to cover some information about the Low Emission Heavy Vehicle Fund.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Claire Falk. I also work for the Delivery and Partnership team, and I'm going to speak to you about the Low Emissions Heavy Vehicles Fund. So this, next slide please. This fund opened for heavy vehicle grant funding in September this year. The fund aims to increase the number of zero and low emissions heavy vehicles on New Zealand's roads and provide market signals to manufacturers to encourage supply. The grant covers up to 25% of the purchase price of a new low or zero emissions heavy vehicle, or 25% of the cost to convert an existing ICE heavy vehicle to be powered by approved technologies. All New Zealand-based and New Zealand-registered legal entities, including state-owned enterprises, local councils and regional councils, can apply. We encourage you to. This fund is for you. However, public service departments, non-public service departments, such as the New Zealand Defence Force and statutory Crown entities, are not eligible. Only the vehicles, suppliers and converters listed on the Low Emissions Heavy Vehicle Fund webpage are approved to offer this grant. The vehicles must be on-road heavy vehicles, 5.9 tonne GVM or more, and for vehicles that are to be converted, they must have only been registered in New Zealand with the first date of registration falling between 1 August 2022 and 20th of September 2024. Non-public transport buses are eligible. This $27.75 million fund is being administered on a first-in, first-served basis and is open until 2028. However, we do expect it to be fully expended before then. Note that there is a $1 million cap per end customer. If you are interested in being a supplier as either a converter of vehicles or a vehicle supplier for this fund, you can register through the website. Check that out for further details. Next slide, please. If you're interested in purchasing heavy vehicles, there are currently 41 vehicles eligible for grant funding, including one coach. This slide shows a selected example of 4 of the vehicles currently in the program. Vehicles include international models that are new to the New Zealand market and brands you may be more familiar with. More heavy vehicles will be added over time, so continue to check the web page to see new vehicles and suppliers that join the program. If you are interested in having an internal combustion engine and ICE heavy vehicle converted, it has to have a New Zealand date of first registration that falls between 1 August 2022 and 20th of September 2024. Eligible vehicles can be converted to battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, or a hybrid of diesel electric or diesel hydrogen. Currently, there are 3 approved converters that you can approach: Global Bus Ventures, Change Fuel Technologies, who are a member of H.W. Richardson Group, and Waste Management New Zealand. Slide 3, please. So how to apply? Check out the Low Emissions Heavy Vehicle Fund webpage and view the approved vehicles and converters. Then make an inquiry direct to the suppliers using the contact details provided. Approved vehicle suppliers and converters handle all the admin for the end customer. We have deliberately designed the program this way to make the process as easy as possible for end customers. Now, imagine a future where there are hundreds of new or newly converted low emissions vehicles travelling up and down the country. Many will be zero emission vehicles. Think of all the consumer goods, the food, the raw materials being transported in a clean, efficient way for the lifetime of the vehicles. We encourage you to share details of this fund with your networks. Check out the webpage for all of the details. Thank you. Over to you, Charlie Hand.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Charlie Hand. I'm part of the Warmer Kiwi Homes team. And today I just wanted to talk a bit about the program, Warmer Kiwi Homes program, and particularly about some new initiatives we're working on in the community and business reach area. Next slide, please. So before we get started, for those who don't know about the Warmer Kiwi Homes program, it was initiated in 2009. And prior to that, there was a similar program, a lead-in program called Warm Up New Zealand. But since 2009, the Warmer Kiwi Homes program has insulated and added heating to over 500 New Zealand homes. And we estimate that's around about 70% of the homes in the target market. So that leaves around about 150,000 homes still to be contacted and still to have heating and insulation installed if applicable. So just a wee bit about the program. The program has focused on the low-income owner-occupier households who are unlikely to be able to afford insulation or heating of their homes. And the government, through the Warmer Kiwi Homes program, is providing funding for up to 80 to 90% of the cost of insulation, or 80%, or I should say, and 80% for heaters in eligible homes. Next slide, please. So in terms of eligibility, there's 4 key areas that I'll quickly run through. You need to own your own home, and the home needs to be built prior to 2008. And you, as a homeowner, have a community services card or live in an area identified as low income. And that's defined by one of the low decile areas or high decile areas, which are 7, 8, 9, and 10, as defined by the New Zealand Deprivation Index. And that data comes from the census data. And we're still working on data from 2013 and 2018. However, the 2023 data will be available early next year, and we'll revert to that. So your home doesn't currently have heating or sorry, have ceiling or underfloor insulation. And the last thing is for heating, the home must be insulated and there is currently no existing heater in the living space. So those are the 4 key criteria to be eligible for the Warmer Kiwi Homes program. Next slide, please. So in terms of marketing, so to date, a lot of our marketing has been around general digital awareness. So that's really, that's been worked on that for the last 6 years. And where we're at that now is it's still very effective, but we've almost picked all the low-hanging fruit. And the 150,000 odd homes that are still remaining to be contacted, they're getting harder and harder to reach. So we're looking more about how we are advertising and what our strategy is for marketing. So the general digital marketing is really targeted around homeowners being able to self-refer to the Warmer Kiwi Homes program. And they can do that via the website, and that's www.warmerkiwihomes.govt.nz. And that will take you through a tool to see if you're eligible for Warmer Kiwi Homes. And that takes only about a couple of minutes. So you put in your address, it'll ask you various questions, and straight away it'll tell you if you actually qualify. And from there, it can link up to a service provider and get the system underway. So the other key area for us is direct marketing in specific areas. And we know the areas which have a lot of homes, which currently could be still available for the Warmer Kiwi Homes program. And by doing that, we can target those directly ourselves, or we work in conjunction with our service providers and they can target those areas through various means, whether it be direct to the community or letter drops or door knocking, etc. So the 2 key areas we're looking at really are community engagement. For instance, localized groups to network with areas of influence. And the last one is for business outreach through eligible employees. So I just want to draw down to each of those. Next slide, please. So our community outreach program, so that supports targeting in areas of low uptake and high deprivation. So those are the areas we know from our research where we think there's most opportunity. So we're seeking and supporting localized community advocates to network and get the word out there. And that's key because we know that we need people in the area to promote the program. The people in the area, the local people, the community groups, etc., they have the relationships with the people on the ground. They have the knowledge and they have the respect within the community. And they can open doors which general marketing can't. So the likes, I'm talking about the likes of, for instance, maybe age concern or budgeting groups, or even medical centres, etc., are a really good opening for getting into those hard to reach people. So by using those people, it helps to break down some of the barriers to not taking up the opportunity. And if you look at the ones that haven't taken up the opportunity to date, we sort of refer to them as a hard to reach, and we have to look at ways to getting to those. And various reasons why they may not have taken up the program. They may have health issues, which doesn't allow them to research the program. And they may not have the tools, for instance, access to a computer to go onto the eligibility tool. They may just need help, someone to come and help them go through the process, set it up, and get things moving. And the final thing I want to talk about here is also secure third-party funding in high needs areas. Now, the program, it funds up to 80% for the heaters, or 80 to 90% for the home insulation. So with third-party funding, if that can be secured in the local area through the likes of lines, companies, trusts, etc., well, then it may be able to make up that shortfall. So if that was the case, the actual funding for the project, for the home installation, would be free. And that's another avenue which could open up more opportunity. Because if you look at it at the moment, on average, for a home coming into the Warmer Kiwi Homes program, the home has to come up with around about $500 to get the installation and heating completed. So if we get third-party funding, we can take that down to zero and open a lot more doors. So the final area we work on this initiative is through business outreach. And this is a program that businesses can promote with the support of EECA. So we're seeking businesses to advocate opportunity with staff who may be eligible for a grant through the Warmer Kiwi Homes program. And at the moment, we're working with two large national companies. We're working with them to looking at putting the Warmer Kiwi Homes program as part of their their employer wellbeing program. So they can target their own employees, and they know the ones that potentially are the ones most in need, in other words, the low income people. So what's the advantage of a program being offered through a business? Well, there's a wide range of benefits for these employees by living in a warm, dry home. For instance, healthier staff. And healthier staff means less time off work. It means greater productivity. And it's not only the staff, but it's also a healthy family, because often you might find a staff member is off ill because they have a child who is sick. So providing that warm, dry environment has big benefits in that area. So happier staff, that improved quality of life. And it supports wellbeing policies and programs. As I said before, a lot of companies have wellbeing programs, and this is something they can pick up. It's a tried and proven program. It's government backed. Everything's in place. It's been operating for 6 years, and they can pick it up and slot it straight into their program. And it's all done online. It's easier and cheaper to heat homes and save money. So once the program's been through, lots of savings there for the people. And the process online is very simple. You go onto the EECA website, straight away you can go into the allocation tool and see if you are actually eligible. So look, we're here to help. We're very keen to promote the program via business outreach. So we're here to work with you and provide whatever support you need, whether it be through posters, whether it be through communication to put on your own websites or whatever, we're here to help. So if you want to contact us on that, the best way to get us is through the Warmer Kiwi Homes at eeca.govt.nz website. So thanks so much for listening. Any questions, ask me at the end of the session. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Charlie. Can someone just give me a thumbs up if they can hear me? I assume so. Great, thanks, Charlie. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about our recent commercial scale solar insights piece. Just to introduce myself really briefly, my name is Gareth Gretton. I'm a lead advisor in the research, evaluation and insight team at EECA, and solar energy in residential and commercial scales is one of the things that I focus on. So next slide, please. So there you go. There's a photograph of some solar panels, just in case you hadn't seen them. So this is a sort of fairly typical rooftop installation we've got on a commercial scale roof here. And one of the things you'll see, which you maybe see a bit less in the residential space, is that they've actually tilted those panels up on some mounts just to kind of optimize the amount of tilt and therefore the amount of energy capture you can get over a year. Next slide, please. So the way that we've approached this recent insights piece is really just to sort of work through a whole lot of questions that businesses really should be asking themselves before they consider investing in commercial scale solar. And we're really sort of aiming this advice at sort of small to medium-sized businesses who would be looking at solar installations in the range of 10 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts of capacity. So just to give you an idea of kind of what that means, I mean, 10 kilowatts would be kind of at the upper end of residential. So most residential installations would be like maybe 5 kilowatts or something like that, but you are seeing up to 10 kilowatts on houses these days. And then 100 kilowatts is what you would see on a building of maybe having a footprint of something like 1,000 square meters or something like that. You should be able to fit about 100 kilowatts on that. Now, commercial scale does go all the way up to about a megawatt. You do see megawatt scale commercial solar installations around the country on really big distribution warehouses, and quite recently a big mall that's just opened up in Auckland. But the advice that we're targeting is sort of probably slightly more at the small to medium, because we're envisaging that companies who are contemplating a megawatt size installations will kind of pretty much immediately be getting on the phone to a solar specialist. So yeah, a whole lot of questions and answers on our website, and not going to talk through them right now, but if we can just jump on to the next slide. There's a couple that I thought really are a good place to start. So that really is, how much electricity does your business use? Seems pretty obvious, but also more importantly, when does your business use that electricity? And then a kind of similar but related thing is how much you're paying for the electricity and how much you're paying at different times of day, at different times of year. It's pretty important. So what we really advise quite strongly is that you need to get hold of half-hourly electricity consumption for your business, and whoever you're working with to design the system and to work out what the kind of cost-benefit analysis is for you, they need to be factoring in that half-hourly analysis and looking at how that matches in with the amount of estimated generation that you would get from an installation on your business. And it's really only by looking at that on a half-hour basis that you can get that sort of accurate analysis that, you know, first gives you a sense of how much is going to be generated, and then obviously that flows through into, you know, what the revenue stream is, or you know, more specifically, what the avoided costs are. So the second bullet point highlighted there is, as I said, how much does your business pay for electricity? Now, again, talking about the kind of range of business sizes that we're talking to with this advice, that is going to vary quite a lot. You know, we're aware that a small business could have a sort of residential type tariff where it's just a pretty much flat rate, or equally, a business could have a much more complex tariff. And we would assume that the sort of most complex tariff that businesses are on, you know, unless they've gone to a full kind of spot market time of use type tariff, is something that divides the year into 4-hour blocks on a daily basis. It splits into weekday and weekend, and then it also splits up by month. And so, you know, just to kind of give you a sense of that range, you know, that means that one business might just have a flat rate, but another business might have 144 different prices they're paying for electricity. So it's really important for businesses to understand exactly how they are paying for their electricity, and also get a sense of whether that's evolving. And I think an area where it is evolving and where it is really important for the financial proposition of commercial scale solar is kind of what your lines company costs are. So your lines company costs are what your retailer is passing on from your lines company. And again, you know, smaller businesses might not have a huge amount of visibility of that. They might just be seeing a daily charge that gets lumped up that includes all sorts of costs, but other slightly larger businesses might be seeing that broken down. And you might be paying a daily price, or you might be paying a price based on the maximum power that you're drawing from the network. So sometimes that would be labeled as a kVA charge on your bill. And what we find really is that those things really matter. And so it's really important that, and also to have a bit of an eye for how this is evolving through time, because solar is obviously a long-term investment and network costs are evolving. They're in kind of different places in different parts of the country. So some have kind of already moved towards a certain style of pricing that's being advocated by the Electricity Authority. Others are still on that journey. So next slide, please. The other thing that we just briefly touch on in this advice is, you know, the two different ways that you can really go about getting solar. So the first and most obvious one is for you to buy it. But what's also becoming increasingly available now is power purchase agreements for solar. So aware that this will be really common lingo for some people, but maybe less so for others. So a solar PPA is basically a long-term contract to purchase electricity generated from solar installed on your roof. And if you're entering into this PPA, then the solar hardware would be owned, installed, and maintained by that PPA supplier. So in some ways that makes it really, really simple for your business, because there's sort of one company that manages the whole process. I'm aware that that could be the case with buying outright as well, but there is a level of simplicity there with PPAs. And really, it's what suits your business. It's worth considering both models, because it really just depends where you're at. Also touch on the fact that PPAs get talked about quite a lot in the sort of wider electricity market. And so there are solar farm developers who are now offering PPAs for off-site solar. And there's a large retail business that's signed up to that sort of arrangement in the last couple of years, where they don't necessarily have solar on the roof of their buildings, but they are being supplied with solar generated off-site. Next slide, please. So then we just got a couple of case studies, and thanks to the companies that have helped us to build up these case studies. So the first one here is an example of a company that's done outright purchase. Argosy are one of the larger property companies in New Zealand, and they own their buildings and they own the solar on top of their buildings and then provide that as a service to their tenants. So that's the array that you can see on the roof, and in fact that was the array that was in the title slide as well. So it's a 60 kilowatt array, and they've done a lot of work to sort of optimize that, and they're getting a pretty good payback period there, and they're getting a really pretty good capacity factor out of that, and so they're getting, you know, a pretty substantial amount of annual generation. And that's covering most of their, or a large proportion of their sort of daytime electricity use in the building for the common areas and for the HVAC supply, and giving them a 10% reduction in their electricity costs and a reasonable amount of carbon abated, and that's that's factoring in grid emissions factors. And next slide, please. So the second one is a hotel chain where they've decided to go with a power purchase agreement. And what you'll see here is we don't quote a payback period, because if you're going into a PPA, then there isn't really a payback period because it's a leased model. And so what they're observing is that they're getting 30% cheaper electricity from that solar PPA than they were getting from their retailer before that. So in a way, this is sort of really demonstrating just the simplicity of a sort of PPA arrangement where it's a straightforward, how much do I pay for my electricity right now? How much is a PPA supplier offering to supply solar electricity to me for? And this particular example shows that 30% decrease. So, if you have that certainty that there's a certain amount of demand that you're going to have on your building going forwards, then this is a great model for both parties. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the final point to touch on really is that we took a really deep dive into commercial scale solar a couple of years ago. You can probably just about read the publication date on that report. I think it might say August 2021, which feels like a long time ago in some ways, but the conclusions in this report are still relevant, and it's linked from the main page. And I think the two things that have really changed since we published this report are prices. So all of the kind of engineering analysis and all the kind of insights that we drew out of that analysis are still valid. What's changed is prices, both in terms of the price of purchasing electricity and the price of purchasing solar panels. So when we did the report, we were sort of looking back a few years, and we'd had quite a long period of relatively low electricity prices, and that was then reflected in the report. They've subsequently gone up, and that's flowed through to customers, obviously. And the price of solar has been dropping as well. So if you look at the costs in that report, we were estimating costs above $2 a watt for smaller installations, whereas we now think they would be sat at about $2 a watt. So there's kind of two things that's going on there. One is that prices have gone down in nominal terms, but given that we've also had a few years of inflation since that report was published, in real terms, that means prices have gone down, even more significantly. So final slide from me, if we can just go forward one, is a table of internal rates of return. And as per my comments in the previous slide about how prices have changed, that's going to mean that all of these numbers will have gone up. So internal rates of return will have improved from all of the numbers that are shown on this table. But I think the conclusion and the insight to take out of the numbers here is really the range of them. So what the table is showing is we looked at basically different types of businesses, and different types of businesses will have different demand profiles. And then we looked at 8 different locations. So the sort of 2-letter character codes there are Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Napier, Wellington, Nelson, Christchurch, and Dunedin. And you can see the table isn't completely full because we didn't have every single type of business in every single location, but we did have some businesses in all locations, so you can do some comparisons across rows and across columns. But key point is really that we were seeing when we did this analysis that internal rates of return were varying between 8.4% and 0.6%, so really huge range. Now, the obvious reason for that is you might be thinking, well, it's sunnier in Auckland than Dunedin, and that is indeed part of it. But it wasn't really the main thing. The main thing that was going on that determined why those numbers are so different is the way in which the lines companies in those two locations were charging for electricity. And when we did the analysis, it really came through that the way that Vector in Auckland were charging for their services was quite favorable to solar, in the sense that if you installed solar, you would see a reasonably significant decrease in your costs of electricity supply, whereas that wasn't necessarily the case in Dunedin. Now, again, things have evolved, so these numbers will have changed in lots of different ways, but the important point really is, rates of return on investment do vary depending on your business, depending on where you are, depending on how electricity is priced. So we really encourage anyone who is interested in exploring this to do the homework, really, and hopefully this webpage and the frequently asked questions will kind of guide you through at least the start of that journey, and give you a sense of the questions that you need to be asking potential suppliers. So I think that's all from me. Hope that was useful for everyone.
Fabulous, Gareth. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone else, all of our other presenters. We now come into the fun part of the session where we get to be a little bit more collaborative. Just to kick things off in the questions, we've got a couple around warmer Kiwi homes. So I'll pitch all of these to you, Charlie. The first one is, warmer Kiwi homes, 2008 seems quite old for the South Island given the thermal efficiency in the building standards. Any chance that could shift to 2014?
Don't know how to answer that. 2000, no, I just, maybe that's a conversation we have offline. I'm just not too sure where that's at.
I could possibly jump in on that one if you want, Charlie.
Yep.
Since warmer Kiwi homes is one of the other things I do apart from commercial scale solar. Yeah, basically the reason for 2008 is because that was when the building code changed before the last update to the building code. So people will be aware that the building code changed a couple of years ago, but it also changed in 2008. And really we've had that benchmark for a long time, because that's really where there's a real sweet spot around the value that we can add through the program. Now, the insulation standards that we use in the program do now exceed the 2008 building code. So, if you're taking a house from a 2000 standard to a warmer Kiwi homes retrofit standard, it's now better than what we were building new build in 2008 in terms of underfloor and ceiling insulation. But the kind of margin on 2008 is relatively small. And so the kind of cost benefit of retrofitting 2008 homes would be quite small. You wouldn't be adding a lot of value, but you would be adding quite a lot of costs. So it's not really sort of currently on our work program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gareth. And then we've got, does Warmer Kiwi Homes Fund cover papakainga? So, housing built on communal Māori land.
That's an interesting one. The answer to that is yes, it can do. And I have been involved with a lot of Māori housing in the Northland region, and that's something that's come up. So one of the key things of warmer Kiwi homes also is who's living in the home. Is it an owner occupier? And if it's on Māori land, potentially it could apply, but we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Lovely, thank you, Charlie. And then the last one for warmer Kiwi homes. Is there any interest to work with local governments to target local government employees? Also curious if EECA are able to target community service card holders.
Absolutely, and that's part of the new initiatives we're looking at with the business outreach. And I mentioned that we are working with 2 national companies at the moment, but certainly we want to have that program open to anyone to pick it up, any business, whether it be local government or any business at all. So to answer that, absolutely, we'd be really keen to work with whoever. Yep. And so what was the second part of that question?
The second part was, can EECA target community service card holders?
I don't know if I can answer. Gareth, can you answer that question? Do we have data on that?
Which question was that, sorry?
Can EECA target community service card holders in relation to Wamakiwi homes?
Well, we definitely do, we do have their eligibility in the program. So we are targeting them in terms of sort of where we know how to get to them. That is one of our problems, because we can't sort of directly mail drop them because we don't have that list, but they are 100% eligible for the program. Doesn't matter where you live. If you've got a community services card, then you're eligible for the program. So any help that anyone can give us, we can actually target them, is always gratefully received, because it's always a problem.
Thank you, Gareth. And while we've got you here, would you be able to tell us, put your solar hat back on, and tell us that if a provider goes into liquidation, do you have any tips on what you should do?
Yeah, I think this questions will be in reference to a well-known solar provider who announced their liquidation yesterday in the residential space. I don't think I can offer you any particular tips. I think probably as if I was a customer of that business right now, I'm not sure I'd be too worried, because you're sort of, I think it will flow through. I think you've still got a valuable asset on your roof, and I think whoever's interested in looking at that business in the future will recognize that that asset still has value and will have that value for decades to come. So I assume that it will work its way through. It's really a question of making sure that the contract that you're looking to sign has provision for that, I suppose.
Well, the solar questions are coming through thick and fast, Gareth, so I'm going to try and bundle them up as much as possible. But does the solar analysis consider how future electricity prices might change if we get an abundance of solar installations, i.e. lower prices when the sun is shining?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in terms of the recently published advice, it doesn't go into that level of detail. As I said, it's kind of how to get started on the solar journey. What questions do you need to be asking yourself to get started, and what questions do you need to be asking providers? The research that we did a few years ago that I referenced as well, it didn't look at that at the time because that sort of felt like it was going to be some way down the track, but it's certainly something that we are factoring into current and future research. So early next year, we will have some more research on residential solar coming out, and that is looking at that.
Fabulous. I'm just going to nip over now to the low emission heavy vehicle charging fund for Claire. If you could take this, please. Do we get advance notice? Oh, the advance notice we've mentioned, the only one I can see on GETS relates to heavy EV charging. So has that been published? Can we clarify, is it open to H2 and other low emission heavy vehicle infrastructure systems?
Can I pass it on to Camilla, please?
Yes, I think this one is to do with, well, a question, I guess, Anne, that this one is to do with the Heavy Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Fund, rather than the Heavy Vehicle Fund, which is grants towards the purchase of vehicles, unimaginatively titled between the two of us, I'm sorry. So I was talking earlier about the Low Emission Transport Fund round that we're going to be opening in the new year. encouraging applications for public heavy vehicle charging infrastructure. It will be open to hydrogen, as I mentioned, other low emission heavy vehicle infrastructure. I guess it depends what it is. At this point, we are really only considering hydrogen and electricity. Certainly something to give us a call about if you know, you have other ideas involved. Hopefully that's answered the question.
Great. And so in terms of like commercial vehicle fleet, there's a growing proportion of fleet, and in fact, I might just come back to this question, just I'm going to try and truncate it a little bit. There's more on solar. They're generally about the same thing about the variabilities. Can we give any examples of what opportunities there are being looked at in the Tech Demo Fund?
Yeah, I mentioned a few of them in the slide, which seemed some time ago. We've been doing things like frost fans. So it's basically anything that displaces diesel. So it's a combination of kind of process heat, things that you might do in factories. We've got a RFP open at the moment for super high temperature heat pumps. So those ones are operating above 100 degrees. Which, you know, it's quite specialized, it's quite new. We're looking for commercial but not commonly seen technologies, and it's across a range of sectors. So like I say, frost fans in vineyards, those types of things. It's heat recovery technology. In fact, we've covered electric tractors as well. So the Monarch tractor that you may have heard about, fully autonomous electric tractor. That one is one of the ones covered by the Technology Demonstration Fund. It's not really limited to anything in particular. It's really about whether it washes its face in terms of the emissions that are saved by the business case. And so, you know, there's a range of criteria. And like I say, my colleague Dinesh is an expert in helping work out whether a project would be feasible, whether it would meet the criteria and likely be successful if an application was made. Yeah.
That's great. And is there any reason that there is a restriction on the latest registration date for the Low Emission Heavy Vehicle Fund?
Yes, so one of the reasons is that we are looking to allow converted vehicles that have the latest safety standards. So that's why the date is 1 August 2022. And then the more recent date, the 20th of September 2024, is the current cutoff date. The idea is that it's just for a 2-year period of time, so that nobody is disadvantaged who has recently purchased a vehicle, that they can still then participate in the program. And receive grant funding for a newly purchased ICE vehicle that they want to have converted. However, if you want to offer a different view on this, in fact, if you want to offer a different view on the way that the Low Emissions Heavy Vehicle Fund has been set up, then you're welcome to provide us with feedback. We have intentionally set up a 6-month review moment with the program, which will begin in the new year. And it will end up with a report going to the Minister in March with recommendations on any potential changes that we may look to make, and those changes will come into effect from 1 July 2025.
Thank you, Claire. And I think we've got time for one more question. And just to remind you that this whole presentation has been recorded and is available on our website. That's just answering another question. Gareth, are you seeing much opportunity for commercial solar installations with battery capacity being able to sell that stored energy back to the grid during peak usage times?
Yeah, good question. So that's actually one of the things that we're taking a really close look at in the residential focused solar study that we're working on at the moment and will be due out next year. So in that study, we're looking at both solar with and without batteries, and we're also looking at batteries on their own, because there is a case for the batteries even without solar. Now, if you're doing batteries with solar, there's essentially kind of two things that you can do. One is that you can store generation that you've generated on site during the day for use in the sort of evening peak period, or indeed, you know, into the night. But the other thing that you can do with them is that you can actually import electricity overnight when electricity tends to be lower cost, and then use that in the morning peak period, either on site or actually actively exporting in the morning peak period. So I think what we see with batteries really is that you've got to make all of these value streams work to really sort of make the business case for batteries. But if you do make all those value streams work, then there can be a business case there. So the short answer is yes, there are opportunities. It really depends how it's kind of incentivized by your retailer and by your lines company, I think. And that is one of the things the Electricity Authority are working on at the moment, is whether there might be some incentivization there. That's under the I think it's the Electricity Competition Task Force. It's all publicly available information on the Electricity Authority website.
Thank you, Gareth, and Claire, Camilla, and Richard, and Charlie. We're going to wrap it up there now because it is 2 minutes to 12. There are some questions that have been left in the field that are open, and we will work very hard to respond to those individually, and thank you for submitting them. But we are just aware that we have put a time frame around this, and we'd like to thank you for participating. Invite any questions in these different fields supplied here, and with that, wish you a wonderful day. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.